I woke up to the sound of a concrete truck rumbling outside my window, and for a second I thought I was dreaming. But when I looked out and saw men in hard hats pouring cement straight into the creek that runs through my backyard. My creek, the one I drink my morning coffee beside every day, I froze. Then I heard her shout, "This creek belongs to the HOA." And that was the moment I realized those people were trying to steal a piece of my land right in front of me. The air smelled like diesel and wet concrete as I stepped outside, still half asleep, wearing slippers and an old t-shirt. The scene looked unreal, hoses snaking across my lawn trucks parked on the edge of the water, and a woman with a clipboard barking orders like she owned the place. She turned when she saw me and smiled, that fake tight smile reserved for people who think they're above you. "I'm Lydia Cross," she said, "landscape committee chair. We're doing urgent drainage work under HOA authority. No need to worry." No need to worry. They were literally dumping cement into my creek. I told her this was private property, but she shook her head, pointing at some printed survey lines. "This section falls under Community Maintenance Easement 7.3. It's all in the bylaws." The way she spoke, so confident, so official, made me hesitate. I started to wonder if I had missed something when I bought this house. Maybe there was a clause I hadn't read carefully. I walked back and forth between the creek and my deed in my head, trying to make sense of it. But I knew, deep down, that water was mine. Still, Lydia kept waving her papers, acting like gravity itself obeyed HOA rules. The cement kept pouring. I pulled out my phone, started recording. Workers were smoothing out the mixture, creating a solid barrier right through the natural flow. Lydia supervised everything like she was orchestrating some great act of civic service. Then she hammered a metal stake into my yard and posted a sign. "Community property. Contact HOA for questions." When the trucks finally left, my backyard looked like a construction zone. The smell of wet concrete replaced the sound of running water. I stood there for a long time, staring at what used to be my peaceful creek. I felt violated, powerless, and, worst of all, doubtful. Maybe she was right. Maybe they did have that authority. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office. I needed answers. The clerk helped me pull up the official maps, and when I traced the boundaries with my finger, I almost laughed. The creek sat entirely inside my property. No easements, no drainage rights, no exceptions. That was all the proof I needed. Later that day, my neighbor Rebecca Shaw called me. She's a CPA, one of those people who keeps receipts from 3 years ago, just in case. She told me she'd been reviewing HOA financial records and found something suspicious. There had been no board vote approving any urgent drainage project. Lydia had signed off on everything herself, and the contractor who poured the cement had also been paid for installing a new irrigation system across the community that same week. 2 projects, same contractor, same timing. Coincidence? Not a chance. That night, Rebecca and I sat in her office, the glow of her laptop lighting up rows of spreadsheets and invoices. Every document told the same story. Lydia had planned the cement work for weeks without approval, without permits, and definitely without the homeowner's consent. Why would she risk all this, I asked. Rebecca looked up from her screen. "Because it's not about drainage," she said. "It's about water." The next day I went out to inspect the creek again, but something strange caught my ear. A mechanical hum, faint but steady, coming from further downstream. I followed the sound until I found it a hidden pump tucked behind the HOA's common area shrubs pipes running straight into the creek bed. My creek bed. It was a water intake system, professionally built, and it was pulling water out of my property to feed the HOA's irrigation network. I felt the blood rush to my head. Lydia hadn't just trespassed, she'd engineered a setup to steal water from my land and use it to keep the neighborhood lawns green. For a few days, I didn't know what to do. I'd come home from work, stare out at that cement barrier, and feel completely defeated. I thought about giving up, about letting it go, convincing myself it wasn't worth the fight. Lydia had power, the board behind her lawyers probably on call. Who was I? Just one guy with a phone full of photos and a sinking feeling in my gut. Then Rebecca called again. "If you stay quiet," she said, "they'll think they can do this to anyone. Something clicked inside me. Maybe it was pride, maybe anger, but mostly it was the thought that silence would make me complicit. I wasn't going to let them win. So I filed a formal complaint with the county. 3 days later, a white county truck pulled up outside. Out stepped Samuel Martinez, a county engineer carrying surveying gear and a clipboard stamped with the county seal. Lydia showed up too, trying to spin the narrative one more time. This was an emergency measure for flood prevention, she insisted, her voice trembling slightly now. Samuel looked at her calm but firm. Ma'am, the HOA has zero jurisdiction on private land. Any modification requires owner consent and county permits. You have neither. The color drained from her face. Samuel took his time documenting every violation trespassing unpermitted construction environmental disruption. Then he slapped 2 bright yellow violation notices on metal stakes right in front of everyone. That was the first time Lydia didn't have anything to say. But the war wasn't over. A week later, I got a letter from the HOA, an invoice demanding $12,000 for property restoration and environmental compliance, claiming I caused the damage by refusing to cooperate. I almost tore it in half from sheer disbelief. They trespassed, they destroyed my creek, and now they wanted me to pay for cleaning it up. I called Rebecca fuming. She just sighed and said, "They're trying to shift liability, but I think I've got something better." She had found a clause in the HOA's insurance policy excluding any coverage for construction performed on private land without homeowner consent. Translation, the HOA was on its own. Every dollar Lydia spent illegally, every cent was uninsurable. We brought everything to the upcoming HOA arbitration. The hearing was led by David Rodriguez, a neutral arbiter with decades of experience in property disputes. I came prepared with folders of evidence, survey maps, photos, invoices, county notices. Lydia walked in holding her binder of community emergency documents, still wearing that self-righteous expression. David started the session by reading the law out loud. No homeowners association shall perform or authorize construction on private property without written consent from the owner. Then he turned to Lydia. "Do you have such consent?" Her silence said everything. I presented my evidence next. Rebecca followed with spreadsheets showing Lydia's unauthorized spending, and even pulled up an email Lydia had sent to the contractor. "Get the job done before the homeowner notices. We'll handle the paperwork later." The room went silent. Lydia's face went pale. David leaned forward. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is deliberate misconduct." When the ruling came, it was devastating for her. The HOA was ordered to pay for all restoration fines and legal fees, while Lydia was personally liable for the damages exceeding insurance coverage over $20,000 from her own pocket. And, if that wasn't enough, Samuel's report had already triggered investigations from the State Water Board and environmental agencies. 2 weeks later, heavy equipment rolled into my yard again, but this time under county supervision. The crew started smashing the concrete barrier to pieces. Each hammer blow echoed like a countdown. When the water finally broke through and surged back into its natural path, it was like the land itself took a deep breath. Then something unexpected happened. The HOA's irrigation system began to fail. Pumps lost pressure, sprinklers sputtered dry, and within hours the entire neighborhood's landscaping system shut down. The creek they'd tried to steal was the only thing keeping it alive. Neighbors gathered along the fence line, watching the chaos unfold. Someone shouted, "Karen, you just killed our lawns." Lydia stood there silent, watching her entire scheme crumble, literally. I stayed calm. When she tried accusing me of sabotaging community property, I simply said I didn't touch your system. I just took back what was mine. By evening, county workers finished restoring the flow, but the HOA's pumps were dead, the pipes useless. Word spread quickly Lydia's emergency project had bankrupted the HOA. They owed more than $60,000 in fines and repairs with no insurance to cover a dime. Homeowners turned on her furious about the special assessments heading their way. At the next emergency meeting, the vote to remove Lydia passed 37-3. She was stripped of her title, barred from any future HOA involvement, and left personally responsible for a mountain of debt. I never saw her again after that. A month later, I installed a small bronze plaque beside the creek. It reads, "When power crosses boundaries, consequences follow." Now, every morning I drink my coffee by that same creek, the one they tried to bury, and listen to the water run free again. And every time I hear it, I remember the lesson that took me months of fighting, hours of paperwork, and gallons of concrete to learn. If you don't stand up for what's yours, someone else will claim it's theirs.